Hi YouTube, it's Michaela. And today I'm going to show you how I sew my pointe shoes. So these are my brand new pointe shoes that I just got. They are Merle Lisa's. First thing that I'm going to do is show you how I cut and measure my elastics, and then we'll get into it. So for supplies for today, you'll need your pointe shoes and this elastic, and then you'll also need some kind of thread. I have used like this nylon. It's a little bit of a thicker, stronger kind of like upholstery thread, but actually lately I've been using this embroidery thread, and I'm not sure what size it is because I threw the tag away, but I feel like this actually helps hold the elastics on better and it's more durable over time. It also is like pretty flexible, so I feel like it gives you even more flexibility you know, as you're dancing and stuff. So I also grab a seam ripper just in case I mess up, and then just a needle. It can be any size. I tend to use like a little bit of a thinner needle though, because otherwise I feel like it puts a pretty big hole in your elastic, and then it's just like as your shoe is flexing and stuff, I feel like it could rip the elastic and then you'll kind of just have to re-sew them later. So I try to use a thinner needle if possible. Okay, so the other thing that I also did before I start sewing these is I put my shoe on and I tighten these little elastics just to kind of get the shoe more molded to my foot so it's not really flopping around, because I feel like that does make a difference when you sew it. So make sure that you tighten your little, I don't know the term for it, but your little elastic thingy at the top here before you start sewing your shoes. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is I have my toe pad on, and then I'm going to put my pointe shoe on and just measure the length of the elastic that I need. I usually do a crisscross elastic because I feel like it just gives me more support and really keeps my shoe on. So this angle is terrible, but how I measure it is I'll sew it kind of at an angle right here where this mid seam is, so it'll start there and it'll cross over and go to my heel. Like on this back part here where this seam is, I'll usually sew it kind of like right here, so it'll look like this at the heel, kind of right here, and then it'll crisscross to this inner seam right here, and then I'll just make sure that it has a little bit of, like it's a little bit tight but not super tight, because otherwise I feel like it kind of like compresses your foot in the shoe more. I want it to have a little bit of give but still be hot enough that it's gonna hold my shoe on my foot when I go up over the box. Okay, so when I start sewing my elastic, I'm gonna kind of angle this back towards the back of the shoe. So I put the elastic on the inside, and then I always have my knot on the outside. As you can tell, it's kind of tough, so I push my needle through, and then so I'll leave a little bit of this hanging out, and then I'm going to bring my needle through and then tighten that so it kind of has like this little knot, because otherwise your knot will just go through the other side and it won't stay. I have my little knot there, and then I just kind of go, you know, in, out, when I'm sewing it. So I'm gonna come back through the back side, and I'm just gonna do this until it feels like pretty secure. Hopefully you can see this. So just kind of back and forth. To get my elastic sewn on. So I'm now at the very end, and what I'm going to do to finish my knot, so you can see I came back to the outside, I'm just going to pick up the smallest bit of fabric here with my needle. Oh, I might need to get my thimble, hang on. So I picked up the smallest bite here with my needle, and then what I'm going to do, so I have my loop here like this, I'm going to pull this through. So I have my loop right here, and I'm going to bring my needle back through. Oops. And then I'm just going to pull that super tight. So now what I can do is I can just cut off my tail right here. And then I'm going to make a couple knots, and this is really gonna give you a secure knot and keep it from coming out. So just knot it like 2 or 3 times, and then I'll just cut off, oops, the tail of the thread. So just cutting off my tails, and I always like to have the knots on the outside, otherwise they're gonna dig into your foot. So I'm just going to repeat the same thing on the back of my shoe, so I'm bringing it across into this back seam right here. And then I'm just going to sew the exact same way that I did the side elastic. And now might be a good time to, you know, put your shoe back on. You know, cross it over and just make sure that it's not too tight or too loose. Kind of mark where you want your elastic to be crossing at the back, and then you can just cut off extra if you have it, and then just go ahead and sew the same way. So it's gonna go kind of on the inside lip right there at the seam, and then same thing, I'm going to, this angle really sucks, so I'm sorry. Bring my needle through on the outside. And just remember to leave a little bit of slack at the end so that you can bring your needle through and make that really secure knot. And then I'm just gonna come from the back side and the front, and I'm just gonna do this in really tiny stitches in a line across to make sure that I have it really secured. So just back to front, back to front. And as you're sewing, you can kind of give your elastic a little tug because you can see how well it's sewn on there and how it's going to flex with your foot, to just make sure you have it really tacked down. Okay, so we're coming up on the end here. I'm gonna bring it through the back one more time. And this is where you're gonna go ahead and make your knot. So I grab my little thimble because this fabric's pretty thick here. So I have my shoe. I really don't know what angle to put this at so you can see it. I'm gonna take just the smallest bite of the fabric. It can be anywhere. So small little bite of my fabric, and I have my loop. I'm just gonna put it around my thumb. Okay, and then it doesn't matter which way you come in from it, but you're gonna put your needle through the loop and pull that good and tight, and then just cut your tail off and 2 to 3 knots. So, and this is really gonna give you a good knot that's not gonna come loose when you're dancing. I think I did 2 last time, but we'll do 3. And then I'm just gonna cut my tails off. So now I have my sewn elastic, and you're just going to repeat the same thing on the other side. So it'll look something like that, and then I'll show you how I do my ribbons. And I don't think I mentioned it, I'll link it as well, but I have this little like flexible thimble. I have used it so much. It's such a lifesaver. It just kind of goes on your thumb, and then this little like coin part here, you can use it to push the needle. It's really great for sewing point shoes because like the fabric's just really tough sometimes. And the other thing that I didn't mention, you have to be really careful on these edges here when you're sewing your shoe. You don't want to sew through this seam right here, because if you sew through, it'll keep this elastic from being able to stretch, so you won't be able to tighten your shoes. So really make sure when I'm sewing, I come underneath this seam right here, just to avoid the elastic that's stretching through your shoe, because otherwise you won't be able to adjust this anymore. So that's also another reason that it's really important to tighten your shoes before you start sewing them, just in case you accidentally do sew through, so that you're already kind of have your shoe set up how you want it. So make sure that you are aware of that as well when you're sewing your shoe. Okay, so one more thing, when you're sewing into the back of your shoe, you can kind of angle it like towards the front of your foot, just that way when you go up, you don't have like that weird bubble, because if you sew it straight, you're gonna have like this gap here that will not be super fun. I don't know, I'm just really OCD, so I'm gonna kind of sew it at an angle so it lays more flush to my foot. Okay, so I sewed my ribbons on, and now is the hard part where you have to decide if you want to do loop elastic or if you want to do just 2 separate ribbons. I think today I'm going to do my loop elastic. So how I'm going to measure it is kind of like hold right here at the seam, and I'm going to wrap it around my foot twice. 1, 2, and then you'll kind of, you know, tighten it however tight you want. And then I'm going to measure it over here on this other side of the seam, and then I'm going to cut that off there. And then one thing you want to do with the ribbons is you want to just take a lighter and cauterize the end of them before you sew them on, otherwise they'll just fall apart. So make sure that you do that before you sew them onto your shoe. The same method at work here. I'm actually going to sew my ribbon on the outside, I think. Just right here at the seam, and just the same process that we did before. So knot's going to go on the outside. I'm going to go through, leave my little tail, and loop my needle through it. Pull your needle through and leave your little end, and then you're just going to loop it through and tie that really tight. And then just same thing, front, back, all the way down your ribbon, making sure that you avoid this seam right here. So, and this is where it gets hard. You don't want to really sew over the seam, but it's kind of in a tough spot, so you might have to use your thimble. Oops, I not rotated to the back. So just same thing. I'm gonna kind of, now I'm at the seam right here, so I'm just gonna go on the other side. And honestly, however you can get the stitches to stay, there's no really science to it, and the more that you like sew your own shoes, you'll kind of come up with your own method for sewing that works, but you just want to have enough stitches to really hold everything onto the shoe. So same thing, finish on the outside, and you're gonna grab the smallest bite. I try to grab both the elastic, I honestly don't know if this angle is good for showing you, but the elastic and the satin of the shoe. So if you can see here, I've grabbed both of them. Same thing, you can put this loop on your thumb if it's easier to kind of remember to keep some at the end. So bite through my shoe, and then I'm just gonna go through my loop with my needle, pull it super tight, cut it off, and tie the ends. And then I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side, just sewing my elastic like right here at the seam. And when you're sewing it to the other side, you don't have to do anything weird, just literally make sure that it's facing the same way and sew it on that way. So my shoe is all sewn. It looks like this now, my loop elastic. So you're going to put your shoe on. So for your loop elastic, you're literally just going to cross it over and behind, and then, oh, that's a little tight, up and over. And it's so much easier, so much quicker to put your shoe on, but this is what it's gonna look like now. And you're all done. You're now just gonna repeat the same thing on the other side. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching. Comment down below if you would like me to do a tutorial on how I darn the toes of my shoes, like this. I can use one of my old pair of pointe shoes and show you how to do the top if you would like, so just comment down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!